Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show where we try to cut through all the noise and really get to the core of what you need to know. And today, wow, we are diving into something that just feels, well, it feels like it's everywhere now, almost like the silent epidemic. There are these recent surveys, and they show this really striking statistic. Over half of all workers say they're experiencing burnout. That's nearly a 10% jump in just 1 year. And you know that feeling, right? The just pervasive exhaustion, the dread that kind of hits you the moment you open your eyes. Maybe even before your feet hit the floor. It feels like this physical weight, a bone-deep weariness that it just won't lift no matter how much sleep you get. So many of us can relate to that feeling, I think. But what exactly is burnout? Like, beyond just being incredibly chronically tired, our mission today really is to move past just hearing the word burnout all the time. We want to truly understand its intricate mechanics. Where does it actually come from? And maybe most importantly, what tangible steps can we actually take, big or small, to address it and hopefully reclaim some sense of well-being? We've pulled together a lot of research, a lot of expert insights to kind of guide us through this conversation.
Yeah, and to start, let's try and get a really clear picture because burnout, it isn't just being tired. That's the crucial thing. The real insight, as experts have looked into this for a while now, is that it's a deep systemic kind of drain. It's this pervasive exhaustion that comes from prolonged unrelieved stress. It's this all-encompassing physical, mental, and emotional drain that, simple rest or even a good night's sleep just doesn't seem to fix. It's really crucial to understand it's far more than just feeling fatigued. And while initially, the exhaustion of burnout was largely understood as coming from like excessive workplace stress, modern understanding now really acknowledges that stress coming from almost any source can lead to this. So whether it's caregiving, financial worries, maybe societal pressures, relationship challenges, all of that can feed into the same feeling of perpetual exhaustion and deep depletion.
Okay, so if you're listening and you've ever felt that profound, that really unshakable weariness, or maybe you've wondered why you just can't seem to care about things you used to be really passionate about, then yeah, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to try and help you connect the dots, between those maybe vague, awful feelings and the larger definable mechanisms that are actually at play here, hopefully giving you a language, maybe a framework to understand what might be happening. Okay, let's peel back the layers here a bit. We've probably all had those mornings where just, getting out of bed feels like climbing Mount Everest. It's just hard. But what does it really look like when that chronic exhaustion tips over into actual burnout? What are the specific, maybe undeniable signals our bodies and minds are sending when we're truly in its grip, beyond just feeling generally run down?
That's such a crucial distinction to make because recognizing these specific patterns, that's really the first step towards doing something about them. There's this widely used framework for understanding burnout. It's often called the Maslach Burnout Inventory, or MBI. And it basically breaks the symptoms down into three core areas. And what's really crucial about this, I think, is that it gives us a language, a way to describe these feelings that can seem so vague and awful. And it shows us they actually cluster together into these distinct, powerful patterns. Once you can name them, you can start to act. So the first area is emotional exhaustion. This is that feeling of just being completely drained, like emotionally overextended, especially by interactions with other people. It's that chronic fatigue that sleep doesn't seem to touch, a profound weariness deep down in your bones. Maybe think of it this way. If every time someone approaches you, could be a colleague, your child, a client, even your partner, if your immediate internal reaction is just, oh God, what now? I have absolutely nothing left to give. That's a strong indicator. It's not just being annoyed or busy.
Yeah.
It's this profound sense that your emotional reserves are just empty. This can also show up as just persistently low energy, maybe a noticeable decline in your mental sharpness, that brain fog people talk about, or a loss of empathy, maybe feeling like you're just going through the motions, no real motivation for things you once cared deeply about. It can even manifest as feeling worthless, or that gut-wrenching belief that you're completely unable to change a bad situation no matter how hard you try. Like your internal well has just run dry. Then the second core symptom category is depersonalization or cynicism. This is where you might start developing a really negative, maybe callous or just detached attitude towards people you interact with regularly. Could be clients, students, your kids, colleagues, or even towards your work itself. You might find yourself feeling really indifferent, distant, or maybe feeling that your work lacks any real meaning or purpose anymore. It's that stark, kind of unsettling realization that you just don't care about things you used to be deeply passionate about. Maybe you used to be really invested in a particular project or a specific cause, and now you find yourself just shrugging, like unable to muster any enthusiasm at all. This often emerges as a kind of coping mechanism, really, an unconscious way to create emotional distance from demands that just feel utterly overwhelming. You're basically creating a shield because you feel like you have nothing left to give emotionally. And finally, the third category is a sense of reduced personal or professional accomplishment. This involves developing these really negative thoughts and emotions about your achievements, your contributions, your overall abilities. You might start feeling that your contributions don't actually make a positive difference or that your efforts are consistently ineffective. Like, what's the point? There's often a noticeable decline in your feelings of competency and your belief in your own success. Imagine looking at your to-do list, maybe, or a project you've just completed, and despite any evidence to the contrary, you feel absolutely sure you're failing. And not only that, but that everyone around you sees it too. It's this internal narrative of inadequacy, isn't it? Where your self-worth feels tangled up with achieving some impossible standard, and you constantly feel like you're falling short.
Wow, that's incredibly insightful because it really gives shape, like you said, a language to feelings that often just feel like this dense fog. So for you listening right now, does any of that resonate? Does it sound familiar? These aren't just, minor frustrations or a string of bad days, are they?
No, not at all.
These sound like significant, persistent signals your body and mind are sending out, like alarm bells trying to tell you that something fundamental is severely out of balance.
Yeah.
And it's important to say they're not signs of weakness, right? They're signs that your deepest resources are just profoundly depleted.
Exactly. Recognizing the symptoms is one thing, but to really address burnout effectively, we absolutely need to understand its origins. Where does it come from? Burnout doesn't just appear overnight, usually. It typically develops after prolonged exposure to chronic stress. And while, as we mentioned, its initial conceptualization was heavily linked to workplace stress, the classic high-pressure job, modern understanding now broadly recognizes that stress from almost any part of life can contribute. So whether it's ongoing caregiving responsibilities, financial hardship, maybe intense academic pressure, interpersonal conflict, or even just the sort of cumulative weight of cultural and societal expectations, all of these things can contribute to this deeply depleted state. We can kind of think about the causes of burnout at several different levels. Let's start with the biological level, the dysregulated stress response. Our bodies have this really remarkable ancient system designed for survival. We often call it the fight or flight response. When you perceive a stressful situation, could be a deadline, an argument, a physical threat, your adrenal glands release hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And these hormones, they ramp things up. They increase your heart rate, your blood pressure, getting more oxygen and energy quickly to your muscles and brain. You become more alert, more focused, and actually better able to withstand pain and exhaustion temporarily. Essentially, all your body's resources get marshaled, dedicated to keeping you safe in that moment. And anything not immediately necessary for survival, things like cellular repair, reproduction, long-term growth, even some immune responses, those get temporarily put on hold. Now, this is extremely adaptive, incredibly useful for short-term stress. Think about escaping a dangerous situation or maybe nailing a high-stakes interview. It's a powerful temporary boost.
Right, so our bodies are brilliant at handling those sprints, those like acute moments of danger or high demand. But then, if that's how our bodies are designed to protect us, what happens when that stress response just doesn't turn off? What happens when we're kind of perpetually sprinting day after day?
Precisely. That's exactly where this system starts to break down. When stress is persistent and ongoing, these physiological systems become dysregulated. They aren't meant to be on all the time. It's like keeping your car engine redlined constantly without ever letting it cool down or having maintenance. Eventually, things start to wear out, right? Things start to break. This constant wear and tear on your body from chronic stress actually has a name. It's called allostatic load. It basically means your body's emergency response system becomes imbalanced. Your cortisol levels, for example, might stay chronically high, and that prolonged high cortisol can actually cause significant damage over time, particularly to the brain, specifically the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory and also other organs. This ongoing physiological imbalance is fundamentally what underpins the physical and mental exhaustion, the brain fog, the emotional depletion that we see in burnout. Your body is essentially stuck in a state of high alert without the opportunity for recovery, and that leads to things like sleep problems, digestion issues, mood shifts, and that impaired cognitive functioning. Okay, so that's the biological level. Next, let's think about the psychological level. Burnout becomes significantly more likely when you feel you lack the resources, internal or external, that you need to meet a particular challenge or demand. So imagine having an endless list of tasks, but feeling like you have no tools, no support, no energy to tackle them. That mismatch is key. And crucially, if you perceive that you have no control over a persistent, threatening situation, if you feel powerless to change things, to improve things, that feeling of powerlessness significantly contributes to burnout. So it's not just the demand itself, but your perceived ability to cope with it that really determines whether it leads down the path to exhaustion. Then there's the occupational level, which focuses specifically on workplace burnout factors. And researchers, particularly Maslach and Leiter, have meticulously identified 6 key areas here that often contribute. First, workload. Now, this isn't just about having a lot to do. It's more about feeling like you simply have too much work, or critically, not enough resources to do it effectively. That could be a lack of materials, not enough time, maybe inadequate training.
Right, the classic too much on your plate.
Exactly. Second is control. This is about feeling micromanaged, maybe lacking influence over how you do your tasks, or perhaps being held accountable for outcomes without having the actual power or autonomy to make the decisions needed to affect those outcomes.
That sounds incredibly frustrating. Accountability without power.
It really is. Third is reward. And this isn't just about money, although that's part of it. It also includes insufficient acknowledgement or recognition for your efforts, or just not feeling a sense of satisfaction or accomplishment from the work you're doing, feeling like it doesn't matter or isn't valued. Fourth is community. This relates to your workplace relationships. Experiencing isolation, maybe ongoing unresolved conflict, or even outright disrespect from colleagues, management, or clients. A toxic work environment, essentially. Fifth is fairness. Encountering things like discrimination, favoritism, nepotism, or just feeling that your work and actions aren't genuinely valued or are unfairly evaluated. That sense of injustice can be deeply corrosive. And sixth is values. This is about being involved in ethical conflicts, maybe being asked to do things that go against your principles, or perhaps just performing tasks day in, day out that you perceive as completely meaningless or totally out of alignment with your personal values. That disconnect can be incredibly draining.
And, it's so important to remember that it's not just the specific job itself, but the whole changing nature of work these days that really influences these factors, doesn't it? Like, if you think about the past few decades, there's been this real kind of erosion of trust, maybe, between employees and employers. This pervasive feeling of being undervalued, underappreciated, maybe underpaid.
Absolutely.
And you see the rise of decreased job security, the growth of the gig economy where stability is uncertain, and the increasingly blurred lines between work and home life because we're constantly connected. All these trends seem to just accelerate burnout, don't they? They fundamentally erode our sense of control and our sense of community at work, making us far more susceptible to that deep exhaustion.
You've hit on some really key points there. And then finally, we can even think about it at the societal level. You can actually feel burned out from the sheer weight of just living in what feels like an unjust world sometimes. A world full of overwhelming expectations and demands that, deep down you'll likely never be able to meet. As some social theorists and writers like Charles Eisenstein or the Nagoski sisters discuss, the collective burden of systemic issues, things like inequality, climate change, political polarization, and just overwhelming societal pressures can be a significant source of chronic stress in themselves. And that can contribute to that deep, pervasive sense of exhaustion and powerlessness that characterizes burnout.
So as you can hear, listening to all that,
Yeah.
it's rarely just one single thing, is it?
Almost never.
It's this complex, really multi-layered combination of our biological responses, our psychological perceptions, and these broader occupational and societal pressures that all feed into burnout. It drives home the point that it's not just a personal failing. It's often a systemic issue with really profound individual impact.
Okay, let's delve a bit deeper now into the actual physical sensations of stress and how our body's amazing, yet sometimes, overwhelmed. Systems contribute to this picture of burnout. You've probably felt it physically, right? Your heart starts pounding before a presentation. Your muscles tense up when you're stuck in traffic. You get that sudden surge of alertness when something startles you. This is your body's fight or flight response in action. It's ancient. It's automatic. Basically, your brain detects a threat, real or perceived, and it triggers this cascade. Your adrenal glands release adrenaline and noradrenaline. These hormones prepare you for immediate confrontation or escape. Your heart rate goes up, blood flow gets redirected to your major muscles, your airways open up to take in more oxygen, blood sugar rises to provide rapid energy, blood pressure increases. Now, if that initial sort of acute threat persists for more than a few minutes, your body releases another key hormone, cortisol. Cortisol further enhances alertness, attention, and focus. It also helps you tolerate pain and fatigue better. And again, while this is happening, all non-essential survival functions like digestion, complex immune responses, long-term cellular repair are temporarily put on hold or dialed back. This whole system is incredibly adaptive and genuinely beneficial for short-term threats, whether that's, escaping those angry wasps we mentioned or acing that high-stakes exam. It gets you through.
It really is incredible how our bodies are engineered for survival in those moments. But as we've been discussing, if that stress response doesn't switch off properly, that's where the real trouble starts, isn't it? So if our bodies are actually designed to handle stress, why does this sometimes break down and lead to burnout? It seems like maybe it's less about the stress itself and more about how we perceive it and, crucially, how we recover from it.
Precisely, you've nailed it. The problem arises when these stressors are long-term or chronic. If you're constantly in a state of high demand, maybe juggling work deadlines, family needs, financial worries without adequate opportunities for rest and recovery, your body basically exists in a perpetual state of stress. The normal negative feedback loop, where high cortisol levels usually signal your body to stop producing more stress hormones, gets completely thrown out of whack. It stops working effectively. And this leads back to that phenomenon we discussed earlier, allostatic load, that wear and tear. It means your body's stress response system becomes chronically imbalanced. Cortisol levels might stay persistently high, which over time, as we said, can cause damage to the brain, especially the memory focus, hippocampus, and other organs. This ongoing physiological imbalance is really what underpins the physical and mental exhaustion of burnout. Your system is designed for a sprint, essentially, but it's being forced to run this endless marathon without any proper pit stops or recovery time. Now let's shift gears slightly and talk about the cognitive perception of stress. Because the way we think about a stressful situation significantly impacts how our body and mind experience it. It's not just the objective reality of the stressor, it's our internal interpretation that matters a huge amount. This is a really crucial insight from research by people like Lazarus and Folkman. Consider the difference between perceiving something as a threat versus a challenge. When you judge that you don't have the resources, the skills, the time, the support needed to meet the demands of a situation, it's often perceived as a threat. And that feels highly stressful, maybe overwhelming. But interestingly, when you judge that you do have the resources, even if it's difficult, that very same situation might be perceived as a challenge. And that can feel invigorating, maybe even exciting.
Ah, okay. So it's about framing.
Exactly. Think about a past difficult situation that you actually felt invigorated by. Maybe it was a career milestone you really fought hard for, or a physical challenge you pushed through. What resources did you rally then? What skills did you bring to bear? Now, maybe consider a current stressor in your life. Could you actually list the internal and external resources you might be able to rally to meet this situation? Just trying to reframe it from an overwhelming threat to a difficult but manageable challenge can be a surprisingly powerful cognitive shift. It's about moving from, I can't possibly do this, to, okay, this will be tough, but I have X, Y, and Z to help me tackle it. And building on that, what's truly fascinating is the concept of perceived control. Research consistently shows that situations that are uncontrollable, or perhaps more importantly, perceived to be uncontrollable, are far more likely to be experienced as stressful and damaging. But here's the real kicker. The perception of control can often be more important than actual control.
Wait, really? How does that work? Well, think of those classic learned helplessness experiments, originally done by Seligman. Laboratory animals were subjected to mild but inescapable electric shocks. Eventually, they just stopped trying to escape altogether, becoming passive and showing signs of distress. However, in some variations, if they were given even a fake lever to press one that actually had no effect whatsoever on the shocks, just having that lever, that perception of potential control, was often enough to reduce their stress response significantly and prevent that complete shutdown, that learned helplessness. It highlights just how powerfully our minds, our beliefs about control, can influence our physical and emotional reactions to stressors.
That's incredible. And kind of unsettling, too, isn't it? The power of just thinking you have control. So for you listening, maybe take a moment to think about how you typically respond when stress hits. Do you tend to feel like you have the power to affect change, even maybe small changes? Or do you often feel mostly powerless, like you just have to accept things as they are? because even just identifying small changes you can control, like maybe delegating one small task or setting one clear boundary about your availability or intentionally extending a deadline on something less critical, even those small acts can begin to shift your mindset away from that learned helplessness towards a sense of agency. And that feeling of agency is absolutely crucial for countering burnout. It's about finding that lever, whether it's real or sometimes even just perceived.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what burnout is and where it comes from. But what about recovery? Recovering from burnout, especially if it's a severe case, isn't usually a quick fix or a single event. It's really a profound process, and researchers like Van Dam have identified distinct phases. Understanding these stages can be really helpful. It can provide a kind of roadmap, help manage your expectations, and guide you through what can be a very challenging journey back to well-being. The very first phase is the recognition of the crisis. This is the point where you, or perhaps someone close to you, realizes that you are truly at a working point. You're living in this constant state of severe fatigue and distress, and it's clear it's being caused by persistent, unrelenting stress. Now, while you're in this phase, you might still be desperately trying to fulfill all your obligations at work, at home, but your impaired cognitive and emotional functioning makes it incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible, to do so effectively. You might find yourself making lots of uncharacteristic mistakes, struggling profoundly with concentration, experiencing significant emotional instability, maybe quick to anger or tears, being prone to conflict, and generally feeling just too physically and mentally fatigued to act effectively. A crucial and often really difficult point here is that because cognitive functioning itself is so impaired during severe burnout, you may genuinely struggle to see just how impaired you actually are. You might think you're coping when you're really not.
Right? You lose perspective.
Exactly. And this might mean it requires a loved one, maybe a trusted friend, or perhaps a therapist or doctor to step in and actively help you recognize the depth of the issue and start finding solutions. At this point, recovery truly needs to become your absolute top priority, even if that means making really difficult decisions and temporarily dropping many responsibilities. It's vital, absolutely vital, to show yourself immense empathy and understanding here. You've likely been exposed to high levels of stress for a very long time, and recovery will also take time. You haven't failed. Your system has simply reached its absolute limit. So once you've recognized the crisis, acknowledged the reality of the situation, you move into the second phase, the recovery of the stress system. The primary goal here is quite simple, but not easy. It's to return your physiological stress response systems, that fight or flight system, back to their normal functioning. And the main way to do this is by drastically reducing your exposure to stress. This is a period where you might genuinely need to step away significantly. That could mean skipping social obligations that feel draining, actively avoiding work if possible, perhaps through sick leave, and even delegating or postponing household chores. The ideal really is to try and live in this no stress or very low stress state until you start to feel your normal functioning gradually returning. Good signs of recovery starting to happen include sleeping better consistently, being able to genuinely feel relaxed for sustained periods, and maybe a returning sense of mental clarity. As you start to reintroduce activities, it needs to be done very gradually. Start with non-work activities first, things you enjoy. Keep the periods short. And critically, alternate activity with rest. Don't just jump back in. You are essentially relearning how to consciously shift your body from that state of arousal or stress back to a state of rest and calm. Reintegration back into work, if work was a major source of the stress, must also be gradual and, ideally, should involve cooperation with your employer, maybe starting part-time or with reduced responsibilities. Throughout this phase, maintaining a healthy lifestyle is incredibly important. Focusing on nutritious food, moderating alcohol and perhaps caffeine, engaging in gentle exercise if it feels good, and prioritizing healthy sleep patterns. You also need to relearn how to be attentive to your body's signals, especially if you've developed habits of ignoring fatigue or pushing through pain. Things like relaxation exercises, meditation, mindfulness practices can be invaluable for rebuilding that connection. And remember to involve your loved ones. Your burnout has likely affected them too, and their understanding and support during this recovery phase is vital. Now, some important caveats for this phase. It can last several months, sometimes longer. And crucially, experts advise not to start intensive psychotherapy during this stage, as it can be too emotionally demanding when you're severely exhausted. Also, try to avoid making any drastic life changes right now, like deciding on a divorce, quitting your job impulsively, or moving house. These major life events require significant adaptation energy, which you simply don't have when your resources are so depleted. Wait until you're stronger. Okay, so once you're feeling almost fully recovered, your energy levels are back, your thinking is clearer, your emotions are more stable, you move into phase 3. Prevention, learning from the past. Now, with your mental and physical resources largely restored, this is the time to explore the root causes of your burnout. Why did it happen? What factors contributed? The goal here is to prevent a relapse, which, unfortunately, research suggests occurs in about 50% of cases within 3 years if the underlying issues aren't addressed.
Wow, 50%, that's high.
It is. So this phase involves acknowledging factors that were perhaps outside your control, maybe an economic downturn affecting your industry or a serious family illness you had to cope with. But it also involves proactively learning new coping strategies for the factors you can influence. This could include things like social skills training, if difficult relationships were a factor, learning better time management techniques, or exploring job crafting.
Job crafting, what's that?
Job crafting is where you proactively try to reshape aspects of your existing job role to make it more engaging, more meaningful, and less draining for you personally. Maybe shifting focus, changing how you do certain tasks, or altering your interactions. At this stage, therapy can also be very helpful. A therapist can help you identify and start to eliminate any dysfunctional patterns of thought or behavior like extreme perfectionism or difficulty setting boundaries that might have made you more vulnerable to burnout in the first place. It's really about building a more robust personal defense system for the future. And then there's potentially an ideal sort of extra phase beyond just recovery, post-traumatic growth. This is guaranteed, but it's where you move beyond just getting back to baseline to actually reaching a place of increased strength, resilience, and profound personal insight as a result of the burnout experience. It's often a time for deep reflection on your core values, your life goals, your ambitions, and this reflection frequently leads to making fundamental changes to your priorities and how you choose to live your life moving forward. Some people who have experienced and successfully navigated severe burnout actually report that their lives are better afterwards in certain ways. They feel they know themselves better, they have clearer priorities, maybe they spend more quality time with friends and family, and they experience increased meaning, enjoyment, and even happiness in their lives. It's a kind of transformation that can be born from struggle, where you emerge not just recovered, but potentially fundamentally stronger and more aligned with who you truly are and what truly matters to you.
Wow, that really is a comprehensive journey, isn't it? It really highlights that this isn't a quick fix at all. It's not a simple matter of just resting more for a weekend.
Not at all.
It sounds like a profound multi-stage process. But, understanding these distinct phases, seeing them laid out like that, it can truly give us a map, can't it? A way to navigate it. It offers hope, I think, in a structured approach. It helps us know maybe what to expect at each point and what kinds of steps are appropriate and maybe importantly, what steps are not appropriate at certain times.
Absolutely. And given that chronic unmanaged stress is the core driver of burnout, managing it effectively is absolutely key, both for supporting recovery if you're already burned out and, crucially, for prevention. So let's dive into some proactive, actionable strategies you can start thinking about or implementing. First, let's talk more about those self-nurturing activities. Intentional engagement in activities that genuinely reduce stress allows your body's stress response systems to return to their normal, balanced functioning. It gives them that needed recovery time. The crucial part here, though, is that you should feel a genuine sense of calm during the activity itself, not just afterwards thinking, okay, glad I did that. The process should feel restorative. One incredibly powerful self-nurturing activity backed by a lot of research is spending time in nature. Nature seems to have these almost unconscious automatic healing powers. It reduces stress, it replenishes our attentional capacities, that feeling of being mentally refreshed after being outdoors, and it improves cognitive processing abilities. Think about how just a walk in a park or sitting by the ocean can subtly shift your mood, making you feel lighter, calmer. Research has even shown faster physiological recovery from stressful events like lower blood pressure and heart rate returning to baseline quicker after people were exposed to natural environments compared to urban ones. And interestingly, even if you can't easily get outdoors, some studies suggest that experiencing nature virtually, like through high-quality videos or even virtual reality experiences, can still offer some stress-reducing benefits. So a nature walk, a hike, gardening, or even just watching an immersive video of a peaceful forest landscape, these can be surprisingly beneficial. It's about letting nature soothe your nervous system. Then, of course, there's physical activity. Exercise offers numerous benefits that go way beyond just physical fitness, especially concerning stress and burnout. It's been consistently shown to significantly reduce symptoms of both depression and anxiety. Physically, it actively counters some of the inflammatory effects that chronic stress can have on the body. And fascinatingly, it encourages the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, that brain region important for memory that can be damaged by chronic stress. So exercise might actually help mitigate stress as cognitive damage.
Wow, so it physically helps your brain recover.
It appears so, yes. And research also shows that people who exercise regularly tend to have lower cortisol responses when they do encounter stressful situations. Their bodies react less intensely. The good news is the intensity doesn't have to be extreme. You don't need to run marathons. Even light to moderate exercise, like a simple 20-minute brisk walk each day, provides tangible benefits for stress management and mood. The goal isn't necessarily to push yourself to the limit, it's more about moving your body in a way that feels good and helps you process and release accumulated stress. Mindfulness is another incredibly powerful tool we can cultivate. It has roots in ancient Buddhist traditions, but it was largely secularized for wider application, particularly in stress reduction, starting in the 1980s by John Kabat-Zinn. Mindfulness generally involves three key components working together. First, having a clarity of purpose, intentionally deciding to bring awareness to something. Second, paying attention to your present moment, experience thoughts, feelings, sensations without interpretation or judgment, just noticing. And third, cultivating an attitude of acceptance, kindness, and non-judgment towards whatever arises in your awareness. Cultivating mindfulness can really shift your perspective. It allows you to observe thoughts and emotions as temporary mental events rather than getting swept away by them as if they are overwhelming facts. This improves your ability to regulate your emotions and increases your cognitive flexibility, your ability to adapt your thinking. And you can achieve this through formal meditation practices, like focusing on your breath, or even by bringing mindful attention to mundane daily tasks, like really focusing on the sensation of warm water and soap while washing dishes, truly being present with the simple act. Closely related to mindfulness is meditation itself. While mindfulness is about present moment awareness, some forms of meditation aim more specifically to quiet the mind, perhaps by gently letting go of conscious thought or observing it without attachment. Meditation has been widely shown in studies to reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, pain, and general stress. There are different approaches. Transcendental meditation, TM, uses a specific mantra. Mindfulness-based meditation often involves focusing on a single present object, like the breath or bodily sensations. The core idea is to create a space of mental quiet and calm amidst the busyness. Yoga is another practice that beautifully integrates many of these elements. It inherently encourages mindfulness, present moment awareness, and often fosters feelings of control and calmness through focused movement and breath work. Research shows yoga reduces perceived stress, can lower cortisol levels, and may reduce inflammation in the body. Practices like Hatha yoga, with its emphasis on integrating breathing techniques, pranayama, and physical postures, asanas, can provide very practical tools for managing daily stress. And its underlying philosophy often emphasizes self-acceptance without judgment, which is particularly helpful for those recovering from burnout or prone to perfectionism. It's a holistic practice that really connects body, breath, and mind. And don't underestimate the simple, quiet power of tea. Seriously.
Tea.
Really?
Yes. Certain compounds in tea, like flavonoids, can actually have beneficial physiological effects on the body's stress response system. Studies have shown reduced markers of stress after drinking tea. Black tea, green tea, and many herbal teas like chamomile or peppermint have demonstrated stress and anxiety-reducing effects in various studies. But beyond the potential biochemistry, think about the ritualistic aspect of preparing and drinking tea. The deliberate actions, the warmth of the mug in your hands, the aroma, the slow sip, that whole process can significantly enhance mindfulness and provide a much-needed grounding pause in a hectic day. And finally, something maybe unexpected. Coloring, like adult coloring books.
Exactly. While it's not formal art therapy, research suggests that coloring can offer a safe, accessible, and surprisingly effective way for self-soothing creative expression. It can induce a mindful, meditative state, focusing your attention gently on a simple, non-demanding task. It provides a cognitive break, allowing that often relentless inner monologue to quiet down for a bit. And other simple creative acts may be building something with Lego, kneading dough while cooking, tending to plants in a garden, or even just singing along to music can offer similar benefits by engaging different parts of your brain and providing a sense of absorption or flow.
Wow, that's a really diverse toolkit right there. From hiking to coloring to just having a cup of tea. So what this all really means, in essence, is finding what truly, genuinely calms you, what resonates with you personally. The specific activity itself might actually be less important than the intentional act of disengaging from the sources of stress and allowing your body and mind the dedicated time and space they need to recover and reset. It's about actively carving out that calm, isn't it? Making it a non-negotiable part of your routine, not just something you squeeze in if you happen to have a spare 5 minutes.
Precisely. It's proactive self-care. Now, beyond these activities, we can also explore shifting your thinking. How we interpret situations mentally plays a huge role. One key concept here is self-efficacy.
This term, popularized by psychologist Albert Bandura, refers to your belief in your own ability to stay in control and successfully navigate challenges. People with high self-efficacy tend to be more optimistic about meeting demands. They generally feel their actions can make a positive difference. And the sense of control and competence acts as a powerful buffer against job burnout. Research links high self-efficacy to lower emotional exhaustion and cynicism, and higher feelings of professional efficacy or accomplishment.
So how do you build that belief if you don't feel you have it?
That's a great question. One of the most effective ways is through what Bandura called mastery experiences. This means intentionally taking on small, achievable projects or tasks and successfully completing them. Each small success builds a concrete sense of mastery and competence, and that feeling can then ripple outwards, boosting your confidence to tackle larger challenges in other areas of your life. So start small, ensure success, and build incrementally from there. Conversely, we need to talk about perfectionism, because it's a very strong predictor of burnout. Perfectionists are often overly concerned with making mistakes and, crucially, how others might perceive those mistakes. This leads them to set unrealistic, often impossible expectations for themselves and sometimes others. And it's important to distinguish this from healthy ambition or striving for excellence. Maladaptive perfectionism is often driven by a deep-seated fear of negative evaluation or judgment. Overcoming it involves gradually learning to accept judgment, to tolerate imperfection, and to truly internalize the belief that your self-worth isn't diminished by making mistakes or not meeting every single expectation perfectly. It's about freeing yourself from that exhausting, unattainable standard. Another important cognitive skill to foster is cognitive flexibility. This is basically your mental ability to switch tactics, shift perspectives, or adapt your thinking processes as needed when circumstances change. Stress, particularly chronic stress, significantly reduces this flexibility. It makes us more rigid in our thinking and behavior. So rigid people tend to stick to familiar but ineffective patterns even when they're clearly not working, which just perpetuates stress and frustration.
Okay, so how can you become more flexible?
One simple technique is a thought experiment. When you're stuck in a stressful situation and feeling rigid, try asking yourself, how might someone else approach this? Imagine someone known for their creative problem solving, maybe someone like Rihanna, or even a playful fictional character like Dory from Finding Nemo with her just keep swimming mentality. How might they respond differently than your usual pattern? Just engaging in this kind of imaginative exercise can sometimes open up surprising new ways of thinking and help break you out of those rigid, unhelpful habits. Then there's the concept of your stress mindset. This refers to your underlying beliefs about stress itself and its effects on you. Pioneering work by Aaliyah Crum identified two main mindsets. If you hold a stress is enhancing mindset, you tend to focus on the potential beneficial effects of stress, how it can be invigorating, motivating, or help you perform better. People with this mindset tend to have more adaptive physiological responses to stress, better problem-solving abilities, and are often more open to feedback. On the other hand, if you hold a stress is debilitating mindset, you focus primarily on stress's damaging effects, how it makes you sick, impairs performance, and reduces happiness. This mindset is often linked to poorer health outcomes and lower life satisfaction.
That makes sense. But can you actually change your mindset about a stress?
Yes, that's the truly empowering news from the research. Mindsets are malleable. You can shift your mindset, for example, by simply learning about the potential beneficial effects of stress. Because stress can actually improve physiological and mental functioning in the short term. It can enhance focus, clarity, and memory consolidation. The hormones released, like adrenaline and cortisol, along with dopamine, can be energizing and boost motivation. Experiencing and overcoming manageable stress can even strengthen your body's resilience and immunity over time. And navigating stressful challenges fosters mental toughness, personal growth, and can lead to valuable new perspectives. So instead of automatically viewing stress as purely negative, what if you could learn to see it, at times, as a potential source of energy and growth? Related to this is becoming mindful of how you respond to stress. This means learning to acknowledge the physical and mental signs of stress when they arise, but doing so without immediate judgment or reaction. It's about moving from that automatic, often reactive processing, oh no, I'm stressed, this is terrible, to a more conscious, deliberate observation. Okay, I'm noticing feelings of stress right now. Interesting. Some experts even suggest actively trying to welcome the feeling of stress, even briefly. Acknowledging it, hello, stress, I feel you, can paradoxically make it feel less menacing, reduce the secondary anxiety about being stressed, and increase your sense of control over your response. It's about observing it calmly rather than being consumed by it. And finally, in terms of shifting thinking, try to center your values. Often the things that stress us out the most are related to the things we care about most deeply. Stress can actually be a signal pointing towards your core values or ambitions. So reframing stress not just as a burden, but as a sign of what's important to you can sometimes renew your sense of passion or purpose. This perspective can also help you identify and perhaps eliminate responsibilities or commitments that aren't actually aligned with your core desires, thereby conserving your precious energy for what truly matters. Viewing stress not solely as an enemy, but sometimes as a resource, a source of energy and focus can help you learn to harness it more effectively in pursuit of your most important goals.
That's a really fascinating reframe for stress, isn't it? Thinking of it not just as something to cope with, but potentially something to leverage, almost like an internal compass pointing to what matters. But shifting gears a little bit, even if you have the right mindset, time or the lack of it often feels like the biggest enemy when we're battling overload and potential burnout. What about practical strategies for managing our time and energy more effectively?
You're absolutely right. Effective time and energy management is foundational. It's hard to apply mindset shifts if you're constantly drowning. So first, and this is often overlooked but absolutely critical, get more sleep. Aim for 7 to 9 hours per night consistently. Insufficient sleep is itself a profound physiological stressor. It directly exacerbates burnout symptoms and severely depletes your cognitive resources, your ability to focus, make good decisions, regulate emotions. It makes effective stress management incredibly difficult, maybe impossible. So, prioritize sleep like it's essential medicine, because it is. Second, learn to prioritize responsibilities effectively. A common method is to triage your tasks based on both their urgency and their importance. A task can be urgent, but not actually very important in the grand scheme of things, like responding to a non-critical email immediately. Another task might be very important, but not urgent, like long-term planning. By consciously assigning these levels, you can focus your limited energy more effectively, ensuring that the most truly crucial tasks get handled first. This helps prevent you from constantly just putting out small fires while the big, important issues fester unattended. Third, and this might be counterintuitive in our culture, don't multitask.
Ah, the myth of multitasking.
Exactly. The human brain cannot actually process two distinct, demanding streams of thought simultaneously. What it does is rapidly switch between them. And this constant switching creates what researchers call attention residue, where parts of your attention linger on the previous task, significantly reducing your efficiency and consuming valuable cognitive resources on the current one. You're less effective at both. So, try to focus on one task at a time whenever possible. For larger projects, break them down into manageable, single-sitting phases. It's about cultivating deep work rather than fragmented, superficial attention. Fourth, actively manage expectations, both your own and others. If you're perceived as being constantly available for everyone, it becomes incredibly hard to protect your focus and energy. Set clear boundaries around your availability, both at work and at home. This might involve renegotiating expectations with your employer about response times, or making it clear to family members during which specific times you need uninterrupted focus. The goal is to prevent constant interruptions and that energy-draining attentional switching. It's perfectly okay and necessary to communicate that you're not available 24/7. Next, consciously focus your efforts on what's most important to you personally. There was a significant study conducted on physicians, a profession with notoriously high burnout rates. It found that doctors who reported spending at least 20% of their professional time on activities, they found genuinely meaningful experienced significantly lower rates of burnout. Now, the specific source of meaning varied greatly by individual. For some, it was direct patient care. For others, research. For some, even certain administrative tasks they felt made a difference. But the key factor was the proportion of time dedicated to that personally meaningful work. So it's about identifying what truly brings you a sense of meaning or purpose within your main activities, whether that's at work, in volunteering, or even at home, and then actively, intentionally carving out protected time for it. And sometimes, especially if you're working in a field tackling huge societal issues, individual efforts can feel incredibly small and ineffective, leading to feelings of powerlessness and despair. Think about teachers, social workers, climate activists. In these cases,
Creating greater meaning with a community can be truly transformative. As community organizers like Grace Lee Boggs and writers like Charles Eisenstein have often highlighted, collective action and activism can powerfully counteract those feelings of individual powerlessness and isolation. Working together with others towards a shared goal increases morale, builds solidarity, and can actually start to address the larger social determinants that contribute to poor outcomes and burnout in the first place. You realize you're not alone in the struggle, and collective effort can create change. Another powerful tool for focusing your efforts is to create a personal mission statement. This isn't just for businesses. A personal mission statement helps you clarify and articulate your core values and beliefs. It helps you define what success truly means to you, separate from external pressures, and it provides a kind of internal compass to guide your daily choices and navigate ethical dilemmas. There's even a structured method called Inspire, developed by researchers Looms and colleagues. It guides you through identifying your core values, naming important people projects goals, setting a clear vision, planning how you'll achieve it, identifying activities aligned with that vision, regularly reviewing and revising, and enlisting support from others. This process helps you filter opportunities and requests. It makes it easier to identify and potentially eliminate tasks and responsibilities that don't actually align with your deepest values, freeing up precious time and energy for what truly matters to you. And finally, amidst all this talk of work and responsibility, you absolutely must include relaxing and fun in your planning. Schedule it. Scheduled periods of genuine rest, relaxation, and fun are not luxuries. They are essential. They allow your stressed out physiological systems to return to their normal, balanced state. And interestingly, research suggests that active leisure is often more effective for recovery from work stress than purely passive activities like watching TV or endlessly scrolling social media.
Active leisure, what does that mean?
It refers to activities that are mentally, physically, or socially engaging, but are done for pleasure, not obligation. Things like jogging, gardening, painting, playing board games with friends, learning an instrument. The key qualities are that the activity should be enjoyable, provide genuine relaxation or mental disengagement from work demands, perhaps offer a sense of mastery or skill building, and give you a feeling of control over how you spend your time. They allow your brain to switch modes entirely. And alongside daily relaxation, don't forget the critical importance of weekends and vacations. These are absolutely crucial periods for deeper recovery. Research shows that weekends are more effective for recovery when they are truly free of work demands and significant conflicts. Vacations, especially longer ones, provide essential physical and mental separation from routine stressors, literally halting the chronic stress response cycle and allowing for significant system reset. But the quality of the vacation matters. The most satisfying and restorative vacations tend to involve genuine relaxation and psychological detachment from work, not overpacked schedules or constantly checking emails. They are vital for giving your physiological stress response systems a chance to truly recover and rebalance.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly through all of that, it really boils down to actively taking charge of your own well-being through this combination of conscious actions like scheduling rest, prioritizing, single tasking, and these profound mindset shifts we talked about earlier.
That's a great summary.
It feels less about just reacting to the relentless waves of stress and more about proactively designing your life, your schedule, your mindset to better mitigate its impact in the first place. And like you said about the self-nurturing activities, maybe the specific activity is often less important than the intentional act of just disengaging from the stress and allowing your body and mind that dedicated space to recover. It's about proactive self-care, isn't it? Not just reactive damage control after you're already fried. That's such a powerful framework for all those proactive strategies we can employ. But as we navigate these really intense pressures that can lead to burnout, there feels like there's another crucial layer we need to consider for building true, lasting resilience. And that's about how we cultivate support, maybe both from people around us and perhaps even more importantly, from within ourselves. So how do things like positive social relationships, for instance, actually play into protecting us from burnout?
That's a critical component, absolutely. Let's start with how positive social relationships impact burnout. Having someone you feel you can truly talk to, someone who really listens without judgment and provides genuine social support is an incredibly powerful protective factor against burnout. Decades of research confirm this. And it's not necessarily about having a huge social network like hundreds of friends on social media. What truly matters is the quality of those connections, feeling genuinely supported, understood, and cared for by the people around you. When you feel safe and comfortable with others, it actually allows your physiological stress response systems, that fight or flight system, again, to get a much needed opportunity to normalize and return to baseline. It acts as a direct buffer against the harmful effects of chronic stress. In fact, some fascinating studies show that simply being in the presence of trusted, supportive people can even decrease stress hormone levels in your body, even while you're actively undergoing a stressful task. It provides a kind of biological and emotional safety net. And this protective effect extends into the workplace too, very significantly. Research clearly shows that having strong support from your coworkers and, importantly, your direct supervisor is vital for preventing workplace burnout. Feeling like you have colleagues you can rely on and a boss who has your back makes a huge difference. And beyond those immediate relationships, broader organizational support also plays a key role. This includes feeling that you can generally trust your employer, feeling a sense of job security, and believing that you'll be provided with the necessary resources to do your job well. All of these factors act as significant buffers against burnout, even in inherently high-stress professions. Now, social support isn't just one single thing. It actually comes in various helpful forms of social support, as identified by researchers like Heaney in Israel. First, there's emotional support. This is really about empathy, expressing love, trust, and caring. It's that feeling that allows you to let your guard down. A classic example is having someone just listen non-judgmentally as you vent about a frustrating day, simply validating your feelings without trying to fix anything. Second is instrumental support. This involves providing tangible items or practical services. Think of a friend bringing you a meal when you're sick or overwhelmed, a neighbor picking up your mail while you're away, or someone giving you a ride when your car breaks down. It's concrete, practical help. Third is informational support. This is about offering advice, suggestions, or useful information that helps someone solve a problem or navigate a situation. A coworker sharing a shortcut or an easier way to do a task, a mentor offering career guidance based on their experience, or a friend suggesting a new coping strategy they found helpful. These all fall into this category. And fourth is appraisal support. This involves providing feedback and affirmation that helps someone evaluate their situation, understand their performance, or improve. An empathetic performance review at work that constructively highlights both strengths and areas for growth, or perhaps a friend who helps you see a difficult situation from a different, more objective perspective is a good example of appraisal support. And it's worth noting that most healthy, balanced relationships, with some exceptions like parent-child relationships, generally require reciprocity. To remain strong over time, there usually needs to be a give and take of support. If you primarily receive support, you'll likely need to offer it in return at other times to maintain the strength and balance of that bond. Okay, moving from external support to an internal skill that's critical for resilience. Setting limits. So many people, especially those prone to burnout, really struggle with this. They overcommit, they have trouble saying no, and this directly leads to feeling overburdened and eventually exhausted. The power of saying no is often vastly underestimated. Selectively, thoughtfully saying no to requests for your time and energy is essential for defining your focus and concentrating your limited resources on what you truly value most.
But saying no can feel so hard, sometimes awkward or like you're letting people down.
It absolutely can, which is why a technique developed by negotiation expert William Erdős called the positive no can be incredibly helpful. It's a way to hold firm on your boundary while still acknowledging the other person's needs and preserving the relationship. It essentially sandwiches your no between two yeses. Let me walk through an example. Imagine someone asks you to take on a significant new project or commitment that you simply don't have the capacity for right now. The first yes affirms the relationship or your underlying values. You might say something like, yes, I really value our collaboration or this cause, and I know this is important. Then you state your current reality, and right now I'm completely focused on finishing this critical deadline which aligns with my top priorities. Then comes the clear no, which asserts your boundary. So, no, unfortunately, I won't be able to take on that new project or chair that committee this quarter. It's direct, but respectful. Then comes the second yes, which reconfirms your connection or offers an alternative form of support if appropriate. However, yes, I would be happy to help you brainstorm potential solutions, or perhaps I could review the final proposal briefly, or maybe I can recommend someone else who might have the capacity right now. The key to the positive no is respect for your own needs and limits, and respect for the other person and their request. This approach can help you maintain important relationships while protecting your essential boundaries from being constantly overrun. Another really profound aspect of building resilience, moving even deeper inward, is to actively work on developing more loving bonds, fostering genuine connection. As Brene Brown, who has researched vulnerability extensively, highlights, vulnerability, the willingness to show up and be seen, imperfections and all, is fundamentally the root of deep human connection. To truly feel safe, seen, and connected with others, people need to feel they can be their complete, imperfect selves and still be loved, accepted, and valued for who they are. And this requires cultivating immense compassion and acceptance both for your own flaws and limitations and for the imperfections of others. It fosters reciprocal relationships between equals based on mutual respect and understanding. Now, what's truly fascinating here, and often unconscious, is that we frequently inadvertently respond to others' vulnerability in ways that actually make them feel unsafe, even when we have the best intentions.
Oh, like what?
Well, think about common reactions when someone... Exactly. These kinds of responses, whether we mean them to or not, make people retract, feel judged, and feel less safe to be open in the future. They shut down genuine connection. So, consciously cultivating deep supportive bonds means practicing listening without judgment, without an agenda to fix or advise unless asked. It means allowing space for imperfection in ourselves and others. And when conflict inevitably arises, it means focusing on clear boundaries and accountability for behavior, rather than resorting to shaming or blaming the person. It's about separating the person from their behavior or mistakes. And finally, perhaps the most profound foundation for resilience against burnout, we must learn to cultivate acceptance of yourself. Radical self-acceptance. This means deeply internalizing the understanding that your value as a human being is inherent. It is not dependent on your accomplishments, your appearance, your job title, how much money you make, or the approval or validation of others. You are enough, inherently worthwhile, just as you are right now in this moment. Your flaws, your struggles, your imperfections, they are part of who you are, part of the human experience. Constantly trying to distance yourself from them, to hide them or fix them all, often leads down that exhausting, unattainable path of perfectionism, which directly fuels burnout. True acceptance doesn't mean resignation or not striving to grow. It means honestly confronting your fears and insecurities. For example, the fear of being seen as an inadequate parent might lead you to overcommit to every single school event, driving yourself to exhaustion. Acceptance involves acknowledging that fear, I'm afraid I'm not doing enough, while also affirming your worth regardless. But my worth as a parent isn't defined by attending every single event perfectly. It's about cultivating the courage to be imperfect, the courage to say no when needed, the courage to set boundaries, and the courage to be vulnerable and authentic. Now, embarking on this journey towards radical self-acceptance might initially cause discomfort, perhaps even friction, in others who are used to you performing or pleasing. But ultimately, realizing that your fundamental worth is unconditional, regardless of external factors or achievements, can truly free you from the constant, exhausting pressure and vigilance that fuels the fire of burnout. It frees you to live more authentically and peacefully from the inside out.
Wow. That really brings us full circle, doesn't it? From understanding the external pressures and the biological responses right through to the internal narrative we tell ourselves and the profound power of self-acceptance. It really emphasizes that building true resilience against burnout is deeply holistic. It involves not just implementing external strategies and coping mechanisms, but also engaging in this profound internal shift in how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the inevitable stresses of life. Hashtag, tag, outro. So we've really journeyed through the intricate, often challenging landscape of burnout today. We've looked at its biological underpinnings, the psychological triggers, the societal pressures that can fuel it, and importantly, we've explored a whole range of actionable strategies for recovery and building resilience. The sheer depth and complexity of this challenge can sometimes feel overwhelming, I think. But what truly stands out to me from our whole discussion today is the profound power of intentionality, being deliberate in every step of this journey, whether it's prevention or recovery.
Yeah, I think what becomes profoundly clear when you look at all the research and the different perspectives we've discussed is that burnout is absolutely a multifaceted challenge. There's no single cause, no single solution. But the good news is there are equally multifaceted, powerful paths towards recovery and prevention. We've talked about so much today, learning to manage your body's automatic stress responses through things like self-nurturing activities and rest. We've talked about actively shifting your mindset to perceive stress differently, maybe even harness its energy. We discussed prioritizing your precious time and efforts on what's truly important and meaningful to you. Finding or creating deeper meaning in your life and work. Building robust social support networks based on genuine connection. And crucially, as we just finished on, cultivating that deep, radical self-acceptance. All these diverse strategies, they might seem different on the surface, but they really share a common fundamental thread underneath. They are all ultimately about valuing yourself and your well-being enough to take action. It can be incredibly difficult, genuinely hard, to slow down and prioritize yourself in a world that often conditions us to always be on, always striving, always productive. But recognizing your own needs, understanding your limits, accepting your imperfections, and making your physical and mental well-being a non-negotiable priority. That is perhaps the single most powerful step you can take to protect yourself from burnout or to begin the journey of recovery if you're already there. It's truly an act of self-preservation and maybe, ultimately, an act of self-love.
That's a really powerful takeaway. Valuing yourself enough to act. So a final thought for you listening. If you were to take just one idea from our deep dive today, maybe it's that positive no technique we talked about, or the idea of actively trying to reframe stress as an enhancer rather than just a threat. Or perhaps that profound concept of practicing self-acceptance. Even in small ways, what would it be? How could consciously integrating just that one concept into your daily life, starting maybe today or tomorrow, begin to change your relationship with stress and protect your precious well-being? What small, intentional step could you take? We really encourage you to reflect on your own unique journey with stress and potential burnout, and maybe explore some of these concepts further in ways that resonate with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.